Hello, everyone, and welcome to Opening Pathways with Tom Lenoble. It's good to have you here today. I have a very special guest today, Nadir Safinya, and he is here. He's the culture branding guide and the founder of Black Ribbit. We're going to learn more about that here shortly. Nadir, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It is an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, I need to know what first sparked your idea to start your company.
Oh, just starting the company. That's a good question. So I started my professional career as a graphic designer, and so my undergrad was in graphic design, and design as an aesthetic field was sort of where I was heading. And back in San Francisco, I started at a tech company. Back then, I was hired as an internal junior graphic designer as part of the marketing team. And that's where I sort of learned my chops. I was in the field for 9 years at that company, learned everything marketing, traditional, digital, through merchandising, product packaging, event planning, all the communication stuff. And, large scale, small scale, digital, physical. It was really amazing. A lot of hats. It's where I was hired by, I always say, my greatest mentor ever, my then creative director, and learned everything from him. And then eventually, as went up the ladder there, I left that company as a creative director, and I was in charge of brand management, doing new brand design, new brand development strategy. I was, liaison between customers and employees and so on. So I was really, really absorbing everything communications and, just learning by doing, sort of unconscious teachings, unconscious embodiment of the practice and the field. And ultimately, um, falling in love with branding. I always describe branding as truth. It is the core of something. It is the crux of something. It's defined by Marty Neumeier as a gut feeling about a person, place, or thing. That is what a brand is. And we as strategists really only have the power to influence other people's feelings about something. Um, but it also means that it's the thing that people feel about you, the thing that people perceive about you. So therefore, it is truth. So how you behave, how you dress, how you are at your core is always the same, no matter what you're doing in the moment. So that's a concept that I sort of created for myself that I fell in love with. And when I thought about my own future, I always was like, I'm going to have my own agency. I want to have a company. I never saw myself as an independent. I always imagined myself having a company of really talented people, like a powerhouse group, this kind of thing. And then I want to get a master's after that job. And when I came back after getting my degree in design management, and a whole world of design blew up for me. Um, I came back to the States, looked for work, wasn't getting a job. Former colleagues and clients came through for me, started freelancing. The company I had registered was NS Design, and in 2018, so I started working under that name. And by 2019, in the fall, I was thinking, I don't like the name NS Design. It's so boring and old and stuffy. And like, I need something different and new and more me, even though those were my initials. And the name Black Ribbit came from an experience in Munich. I was riding a streetcar and we passed a tattoo parlor that was actually called Black Rabbit, but I misread it because we were going by too fast. And by the time I did a double take, it was too late. And I misread it as Black Ribbit. And I started imagining all these tree frogs and images of frogs and so on that I later learned was symbolic of empathy, guidance, and the wisdom to empower oneself, in addition to transformation and transcendence. which is characteristics that describe how I like to live or conduct myself in my life and how I run my business. And ultimately, I was like, ooh, that would be a cool name for a company. And in fall of 2019, I launched Black Ribbit, with the desire to create a very cool company for cool people with the mantra that I want to bring cool jobs to cool people. So that's how that all began.
Wow, wow. So I'm curious on this journey you just described for us with your current company. Was there a moment that you had something happen that you went, yes, this is my path?
Yeah. So today, as you mentioned in the beginning, the company is positioned as the culture branding agency. And hence I'm the culture branding guy. And culture branding in the way that I define it is basically making sure that what you say matches what you do. And as an organization, that can get quite complicated. But it also seems to be a lack of the norm. So, meaning the thing that happened to me, the thing that, I mean, it didn't happen to me, it was an experience that I had, was looking for work in 2021. So, I launched the company in 2019, targeted hospitality, which was the worst timing ever because 5 months later, the entire industry shut down. And anyone listening and was there absolutely knows what that was like. It was detrimental. And then in 21, as a result, like many others, I started looking for work. While I didn't shut my doors, business was just not coming in. 21 was a really bad year. And I had to reposition again and so on. But I applied to something like 460 jobs in about 6 months. And I got one interview and 60 denials or rejections from what were clearly robots. And 400 just ghosts. And I started feeling insane as if I was in a black hole with no mirrors. And anyone who's been through that and continues to go through that, I'm fighting for you because I know what the hell that feels like. It's horrible. And just no feedback, no feedback, no feedback. You start feeling crazy. And as a human, feedback helps. As a designer, it's like my oxygen. It's like a life source. I require feedback to do anything. And so, um, that was the catalyst that took me down the road of what is going on. I mean, why is this a thing? There's no reason I should be only getting one interview. This is crazy. Especially during a great resignation when there's apparently all these jobs available. And at different levels. Like I'm going down the ladder. It was just crazy. And so I discovered that there's a big break in the workspace, in how organizations sort of position themselves um, with what they say and what they do. And I noticed that, traditionally branding agencies, sales, marketing, even leadership focus primarily, if not exclusively, on the customer experience. And then like HR and coach, maybe HR, coaches, change management, and so on, focus on the employee experience. And these two sides never speak. So there's this great break between the customer and employee relationship and the employee and employer relationship. So the market doesn't really get what the market sees. And the first place this is evident is in the job application process. Um, and so that led me down the road to creating a bridge between the two sides, the customer brand and the employer brand. So basically answering why would anyone want to buy from you, which is standard, but also why would anyone want to work for you? That question is not often answered. And not in the sense of do they buy into the customer experience? Because that's usually what's happening. But do they buy into their own experience? The thing, the experience you're going to create for them, how you're going to serve your employees as an employer. And that became the the unique sort of aspect of my model. And that's where I finally named it the culture branding strategy and the culture branding statement because it's combining the company's values with the company's with the experiences the company wants to create. Therefore, you're a culture branding company, culture
Yeah,
brand
I
agency.
love this. I know there's been times in my career where I was responsible for customer operations along with HR, and more than one CEO would come to me and say, "What are you doing? Why are you heading these two different things?" And my standard answer was, "They're both customers. One happens to be
That,
internal,
yes,
and one happens to be external." And they'd have to think on that for a few minutes, but it was at least a good answer I had for them. So I'm curious, who were your early role models in life?
oh, that's a question. That's an interesting question because there's a difference between role models and idols. I've never idolized anyone. That was something that I never had. It wasn't a quality in me. But my role models, I mean, they certainly started with my folks, my father, my grandfather, my mother's father has always been was always a very prominent role model in my life for various reasons. But he sort of defined, he kind of embodied the kind of person, kind of human I wanted to be. Um, right until the end. So that was always very, he had a lot of influence in my life. But then, again, later in life, when I was a teenager, or at least in college, I had, a very, very influential professors in my life. My first mentor out of school, the one I described earlier, was definitely one. Role model is an interesting term for me because I've always been good at sort of picking and choosing and seeing, what aspects I admire and what aspects I don't. Um, you know, Everyone I just described, except for my grandfather, my uncle as well. Like my uncle was a role model for me growing up. But it was never 100%. There was definitely areas that I actually used as examples of what not to do,
To be,
as
yeah.
opposed to, what not to be and but then areas that I admired tremendously that I would pick from. But, I've thought about this a lot, Tom. It's interesting you asked me that question because it's something I've been thinking about a lot in the last year. And my grandfather was certainly one where I could never find anything that I didn't admire. And that was, you know, I knew him for 40 years, well, 38 years, but uh, he was definitely a major influence in my life.
Yeah, I like this idea of the difference between idol and role model. I find that some people read a business book and they idolize the person that wrote it, and they go and
Yeah.
try and be that person, and that never works. But you can use this person as a role model to filter through you and how you move about in the world as opposed to trying to be who they are. So I like this concept, Nadir. I want to shift a little bit to leadership, and I'm curious, did you have like a pivotal experience that defined how your leadership style was going to be?
Another good question. I don't think it was no, I wouldn't say there was a pivotal moment. It was definitely gradual. Um, and what's interesting is that through that sort of gradual growth, my core, as like what I was talking about as far as brand is concerned, like my core always remained the same. Um, and if I had to define my core essence, it's honesty and reliability. And compassion sort of surrounds the two. And the so anyone who and I say this because I'm actually quoting people who know me. I've always had sort of leadership capacities, like leadership characteristics growing up, even when I was younger. So I was basically an introvert until I was about 14, 15. And an incident happened when I was in second grade that really shut me down. I became completely repressed, and for about 7 years. And then another incident happened with one of my dearest friends with whom I am still connected. Where I sort of broke out of that shell. And I thank him all the time in gratitude because he started something. He started something in that moment that essentially changed the rest of my life that I grew into more and more and more. Um, and I was, I've had like again, my mentor was a big influence on my leadership skills, my leadership capacities, my management abilities. I learned a lot from him um, about how to manage creatives, for example. Creatives are not easy personalities to manage. It's literally like herding cats. They're very rebellious types, and artist types, creative minds, and so on. So anti-authority and all that fun stuff. Um, but to get back to your question, it was, I'm the guy who there are these tests that I'm sure you know of where they'll put a bunch of people in a room and then sort of ask the group to solve a problem. And then they just observe, the people conducting the experiment are observing who's doing what. It's a very quick way to identify personalities just through observation. And I'm always the guy who just stands back and lets everyone else do what they're doing. And then if the problem can't be solved or is taking too long to be solved and there's too much argument happening or whatever, that's when I step in because I've already sort of seen the issue. I'm watching everyone work. I don't like to be redundant. I'm seeing all the other stuff everyone else is doing. And then if I need to, I'll get in there and then I'll try to solve the problem because I've already visualized it. That's sort of the same qualities that I've carried with me, which allows me to be very collaborative in
Yes.
my leadership skills, but then step in when I have to, if I have to, but give a
Yes.
lot of ownership to those around me.
Yeah, those of us that are leaders, we either learn the hard way or we use our skills. We've all had leaders that, what's the word, micromanagement. I know I'm
Yeah.
coaching someone now that is, I call it the in the weeds syndrome. And,
Yeah.
we all like to be able to use our minds, but know someone's there to support us if we need it, and but allows us to do our job. So I love this concept you brought up here. I'm interested what your early days at your company um, taught you about
At my company, well, hmm, I'm inherently trusting. And that has been, you and I have talked briefly about this actually, because I recently had an issue with the same thing. But I it comes from the same sort of leadership quality where I'm very collaborative and I like to give people ownership because I happen to see potential everywhere. It's one of the reasons that I get frustrated a lot because I honestly see potential in pretty much everybody. And, I'll have these big humanity moments where I'm thinking of all that could be accomplished if everybody just kind of lived up to their potential and believed in themselves more deeply or whatever, like all the confidence booster jargon that we all hear everywhere and like keep your chin up posters and all that stuff. Um, and as a result, I tend to work with a lot of people, a lot of different kind of personalities, different types of people, different personality types, different skill levels, and so on, because I see something that I think can be nurtured. And then I get to a point where, it's just not, first of all, it's not really my responsibility to do that. That's something I've had to come to accept. It's difficult for me because I inherently like to help people reach that potential. Um, and when I find myself in a position where I feel like I'm failing, it starts to impact my ability to trust that person as well because I'm getting to a point where I'm like, I'm doing everything. I'm helping you with all this stuff. I'm opening all these doors. I'm practically giving you the answers. And yet, you know, we're still not getting anywhere. And I don't understand why. And now I'm relying on you, and that reliability is being betrayed because you keep telling me you're gonna do the thing that I asked you to do or that we agreed to together, and you're not. So now it's messing me up because I'm losing trust in this entire relationship. And it starts trickling into personal boundaries and so on. And so that lesson consistently takes me in and out of being closed off and being open and being closed off and being open because I don't want to lose my inherent trust in people. I think it's a good quality to have, but it's also required me to be more careful and let's call it spot the red flags sooner than and not even spot the red flags sooner, but like do something about spotting the red flags sooner,
Yeah.
go into my gut of experience.
Yeah, the red flags doesn't mean we're going to a carnival usually. And I've heard a theme on this podcast of people who trust, and what one of the things they've learned is to trust yet verify, which I have found
Yeah.
really interesting how people present that. I'm curious, tell us about a risky decision that paid off. What gave you the courage to do it?
Oh, um, well, honestly, the culture branding narrative was risky in itself because it's a new one. I'm essentially carving out, I'm creating a market category, which is totally scary. It requires so much education, and there has definitely been a lot of signs. I mean, equally, but a lot of signs that have pointed towards this is not the right time. This is crazy. Like, what are you doing? Too much is being invested in this. It's, too much, too fast. It's too complicated. All the twos. And honestly, Tom, it's just belief. There's really not much else when it comes to innovation. You can do all the work. As a designer, I like to work with data. I like to work with certain data, but it's also my ability to trust my own instincts in the observations that I make. I've always been a very astute observer since I was a kid, and as a result, have been very intuitive with those observations. And as well as I do, as a strategist, like you can't make those you can't be like, oh, it just feels right. It's not a it's
Doesn't
not a
work.
argument you can make. You can do that in the innovative field all day long if you have believers around you with a lot of money, but otherwise you have to point to some evidence. Um, but in my case, I've just been, you know, I can't, there's no other way to say it. I feel something that I've observed that just feels right based on the experiences that I've had in life. And I feel, if I stick behind this, if I do it the way that I envision it and I tout it enough, and I get the verification that I need, the in-person live verification, then it'll work. And then persistence is the only key ingredient after that.
What are the values that are non-negotiable in your organization?
Ooh, reliability, compassion, and deliberate action.
Good. Those are those are awesome ones. I like that. Yeah. The wisdom
Yeah.
here, today, Nadir. I'm curious. What's your boldest vision for the next 5 years? What's going to happen with Nadir in the next 5 years in your company?
Well, we're going to be on the way to changing the world. The culture brand program is a change the world initiative. It's the vision itself is, to make humanity harmonious by lifting our relationship with the workplace. And um, that's rooted in the idea, in the belief that there is a certain utopia. We're in a position, in a place of human evolution right now where we've created the inevitable machine companion. And while we're in its infancy, it's progressing just as fast as everyone predicted, and probably even going to move even faster. So by 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to have machine companions, and the idea of a utopia is absolutely possible, meaning that humans and machines will live in harmony, where machines are working on, no pun intended, machine-like work that is not designed for humans to complete anymore. We've been doing this for 6 to 10,000 years, depending on when you want to begin the emergence of humanity and as a species. And get away from mundane work, have more time to spend on ourselves, with our families, with our communities, with our loved ones, of being service to the communities and so on, to each other, so we can become better at being human, maximizing our human potential. And the catalyst, in my opinion, for that to even start and begin is the workplace, because that's where we spend most of our time. So if we can gain time in the workplace and gain time in our personal lives to work on ourselves, then we can proceed to just be better at being human. So it starts with happy work equals happy life. Be happy at your workplace, be happy in your personal life. And what happens when we leave work pissed off? We go home and we take it out on our spouse, on our kids, on our friends, on our communities, on the bartender, on
On the
whoever.
pet, on the
And
dog.
yeah, on the dog, on our pets, on anyone. And if you're alone, you're like calling people and spitting poison because you need to talk to someone and you're pissed off. But if you're happy, it's equally palpable on the other side, and that spreads. It spreads quickly. And I honestly believe that this program that I've created is one way to reach that kind of harmony in pieces, in a way that, wicked problems defined as problems that don't have single solutions are practically impossible to solve, like global warming or immigration, require pieces to require it to be solved in pieces, which is why it's almost impossible to solve completely. But I believe if I can do this company by company by company, which impacts and influences the communities in which those organizations exist, their families and their families and their families, then it's built basically a building block to, dare I say, world peace.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's my big bold vision and
I
idea
like
for the
it.
next 5 years.
I like it. If resources weren't a constraint, you could have whatever you needed: money, time,
Yeah.
energy, enjoyment, the support of others, all of it. What wild idea would you pursue?
Oh man. Tom, it's honestly, I would just take this idea. This is the idea. This is my thing. This is my absolute passion. And I'm not just saying that. Like, this is my absolute passion. I want to be in a position where this thing is being run by, the coolest, most talented people on the planet. It's spread. Instead of traditional branding agencies, you have culture branding agencies popping up all over the place. And I was the pioneer. And now I'm on mountaintop to mountaintop skiing with a family of 8 children and my wife to be. I'm alone right now. That's what I want. And just seeing the world get better and better because people are actually treating everyone like humans across the board. We haven't, speaking of resources, the world has enough resources to spread, equitable wealth across the entire planet. 9 billion people would actually live in abundance. That's what's crazy. And, a program like this is needed just to create the lens into the possibility of that.
What shift in tech is got you excited right now?
Hmm. In tech. Hmm. Honestly, it's just the consistent progress of what's possible with AI. The speaking of my own program of just in all kinds of spaces in healthcare, in senior healthcare, in children's education, and so on. There's a lot of really cool possibilities where you know ML becomes companion, becomes a what's the word I'm looking for? Like an enhanced companion where it's enhancing the lives of humans, not replacing them. And those who are working in that capacity are the ones steering that utopia that I'm talking about. Because the dystopia is quite easy to picture, but the utopia is very possible. And what's happening in sort of the ethical and equitable space of AI is very cool because it's taking into consideration true what it actually means to work with an enhanced companion in an equitable state where it's not taking over, the stuff that we actually need to be doing and enjoy doing as humans. What's the old, like the thing everyone says now? Like, I don't want a robot to do my art while I mow the lawn. I want the robot to mow the lawn while I do my
Do my
art.
art, yes, yeah. I had an interesting experience last night with my companion, and I found myself arguing with it to the point that I was displeased with what it was producing. So I said, "No, what's wrong with you today?" And I love how it's always right. It always compliments me. I can yell at it. I can, whatever I want to say, it gives me feedback back that makes me feel like I'm right, and then it does the wrong thing again, and I realize likely I'm the one that's creating that, but I had to think for what my relationship was. So, Nadir,
Yeah.
I'm interested in knowing what you would tell an emerging leader or founder right now that was just starting out.
I would um I would say you need to ask the two fundamental questions. Why would anyone want to buy from you and why would anyone want to work for you? And be very careful about how you phrase that question exactly like that because you might be thinking of why someone should buy from you and why someone should work for you. But to be able to answer why they would want to is a whole other level of empathy. And the quickest way to do that actually is look at yourself dead in the eyes in the mirror, make eye contact with yourself, point at yourself. It gets awkward, trust me, and ask, would you want to buy from you?
Yes.
And say, would you want to work for you? And see if you can answer that. It's a
Yeah.
great place to start.
Yeah, viewers, that was a rewind moment. I'm sure you will. I have one final question for you, Nadir. If your younger self was listening to this episode of Opening Pathways, what would you say to them?
Uh, what I think I would just say it's gonna be okay. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna have a blast. If it was the 15-year-old self of me, I'd be like, just don't worry, just go. It's gonna suck at sometimes, but it'll all be for something.
Good, thank you. Nadir Safinya, give us a little talk about who your company is before we end today.
Absolutely. So my company, Black Ribbit, the culture branding agency, is a company that ensures that what you're saying matches what you actually do by really being able to answer two fundamental questions. Why would anyone want to buy from you, and why would anyone want to work for you to the point where you can get an employee and a customer who have never met into the same room and they'll tell the same story about your company. And that is the ultimate value of what I do.
Great. Nadir, thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
Thank you, Tom, for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yes, and viewers, I'll see you next time on Opening Pathways. Have a great day.